Alright class, here we go. We're going to get started with our 1.1 points, lines, and planes, and this is going to be the start of our flipped classroom. If you end up hearing my cat meowing in the background, I apologize in advance. So basically we're going to be looking at the very beginning of geometry, and you have to remember that geometry is a completely different kind of math. It's not your typical algebra or anything like that. We use algebra and we use all those math concepts that you've used so far, and if you don't feel very strong in them, make sure you're asking questions and that I can help you with that. But algebra or geometry itself is based on a lot of vocabulary, it's based on a lot of theorems, and it's based on a lot of visual and being able to kind of picture and think about what would make sense with it. It's very logical. So it is very different. So if you're very good at math, this may not be your strongest one. If you're not very good at math, this may be your strongest suit in math. I mean, it just very much depends. So just telling you that straight out from the get-go, that this is going to be very different. Okay, geometry is very different than any other math class you've taken. Okay, so basically today, this is the foundation of what we do the entire course. Okay, and the reason that we do a mastery classroom in here is because every single concept, if you don't understand it, you cannot move on. You cannot get the next concept without having this foundation, without having the foundation of every concept that came before it. So we're going to talk about points, lines, and planes. We're going to talk about segments and rays, and just start to get into kind of some of this visual stuff. So when we first look at it, we have first thing, we have undefined terms. They're point, line, and plane. Okay, points, lines, and planes they're considered undefined terms. They don't have like a formal definition, but they are the foundation of what we start with in geometry. So we give them this definition. So that way we can describe things and we can talk about things in the same way, in the same manner. So the first thing we have is a point. A point is just a dot, okay? And I want you to think it's not just like this dot, like that little dot that shows there. I mean, it's as small of a dot as you can. The most precise, if you had a pen, like a needle, you poked a little hole in space. I mean, that is a point in space. It does not have dimension. It doesn't have width is what it means. It doesn't have length, height. It is a specific spot, okay? Just at one place in the air. So, I mean, you have points all around you, right? You could pick out a piece of dust falling from the ceiling, and it is at a point everywhere it goes. It would like represent a point, kind of floating down. A line is one-dimensional, okay, so it does have one dimension. It's represented by two arrowheads on the ends, and that's important as we get along later. So two arrowheads because it's going to keep going forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. It's never going to stop. It's just a line. It's just one line that's just shooting through space. Okay, and it's basically all it is many points connected together. So we just have all these bajillion points that are on this one direction, and this line can just go forever and ever and ever. Okay, and so we label a line by its points, and so we would call it AB, line AB, and we could put the symbol above it that has arrows showing that it's a line. It goes on forever and ever. It doesn't have a stopping place. And then a plane has two dimensions. So a plane you can kind of think about as a piece of paper. And so, except for that paper would extend in all directions. They keep going and going and going and going. So like any kind of flat surface, that's a plane. But it doesn't have like necessarily a depth. Like, you know, if you look at your piece of paper, yeah, that piece of paper may have a little bit of depth there to it. It's very small. It's very insignificant. But a plane doesn't actually have that depth. And so it just is that one, it's like a slice in the air, basically. And then we have two more vocab words on here. We have collinear and coplanar points. Collinear, notice the word line in there. Okay, collinear, line is right there. Then collinear is their points on the same line. Coplanar, we have the word plane almost in there, P-L-A-N. Coplanar are points that are on the same plane, okay? So as we look at this first example, we're going to name points, lines, and planes, and just kind of start to see this visual and start to understand what it means. So it says to give two other names for PQ and plane R. So if we look at the line PQ, PQ is the one that's going through right here, right? Okay, and it asks us to give it another name. So in order to give it another name, we can either name it by two other points that are on it, or if it gives that line a name. Okay, so PQ, we don't have any other points, but we can switch the points. So we could call it, so this is my A. We could switch them and say it's QP. Okay, that's the same exact line. It's just named differently in different order. And then the other name for it would be this little symbol here of N. And so it would just be line N. And that was my cat knocking stuff down, if you heard something. And so line N. And so those would be two different names that we could call PQ. You can call it by any 2 points on it. You can switch the points, or if it gives you a specific letter for that line. Okay. Then it asks us to name 3 points that are collinear. Okay, so collinear, remember, they're on the same line. So we need to be able to know they're on the same line. So if I do that, well, if I look at Q, Q, P, there's not another point there, right, in that same line. We have another point, we have V. V's off by itself. We don't know for sure if it's in line with anything. Of course, I could make a line with V and S. I could draw a line through there, and that would be one line, but we don't know it for sure of any other points that go through it. VT would be the same thing, VQ, VP. But we want 3 in a row. So 3 points that are collinear. It means that we're going to have to use these 3 right here, right? They're the only ones that are shown to be on the same line. So we would say 3 points. We would say points S, P, and T. Okay, and that's it. And then this is the name 4 points that are coplanar. So they just have to be on the same plane. They don't have to be in the same line. So if you look at just points that are on that plane, okay, we have a plane here of R is the name of that plane. This symbol in the bottom right, that's the name of the plane. And so 4 points that are on that plane would be V's on it, obviously. Then we have S, P, and T that we just named. That's a line that's on that plane. So we would say those 3. So we would say points, or those 4, sorry. V, S, P, and T. Now we couldn't do Q, because Q is not on that plane, right? That line's going through the plane. It's like as if I put a pencil through a piece of paper. And then M and N represent the lines. They are not points, they just represent lines. So then next we looked at defined terms. Defined terms are because we now use these points that or these terms that we just made up, right? Okay, so point, line, and plane are terms that are made up for geometry so we can describe things and understand them. Defined terms, we use those terms. We use point, we use line, we use plane to describe these other terms. Okay, so in the first one we have a segment. Defined terms, we're doing segments and rays. So we have a segment first. We have a line segment or segment AB. You can write it either way, but basically it's just a portion of a line, right? So if we take this line here, we just take out just the portion of A to B, we get that line segment then. Okay, it's no longer a line. We're not talking about its existence from forever and ever and ever, never ending. We're talking about its definite distance there, right? Definite start point and definite end points. Okay, then we have a ray. A ray is basically part of a segment and part of a line, right? So we take this line and we're saying, well, we're going to have one starting point or one end point. So like here we have A, and then we want it to go through B and never stop. Okay, or we could start at B and we could go through A and never stop. But note that they're 2 different rays. Okay, they're not the same. One's going one direction, one's going the complete opposite. And then we have opposite rays, and opposite rays are just rays that you can name on a line. They're on the same line, they're going in an opposite direction with that common point in the middle. And so we have the ray that goes this way from C through A and on, and then we have the ray that starts at C as well and goes through B and forever on. Okay, and so those 2 rays are opposite of each other. And then one other thing to note is how you label them. A line segment is labeled without arrows on it above the letters. A ray is labeled with the direction that it's going. Whatever letter it's going through, you need to have that arrow going that direction. Okay, and so in this example we have, again, we're just looking at these things. A, it says given the name for GH. Well, GH, first you need to think about what it is. Is it a line? Is it a segment? Is it a ray? Okay, if you look at it, it doesn't have arrows on the ends of the line above it, so that means it's a segment. So that means it's a definite distance. It has to go from H to G. Okay, it has to be, it's that portion of the line, regardless. Okay, so if we want to give it another name, the only other name we can give it is just switching the letters, right? Because I can't say HJ. Yeah, that segment goes through J, but if I said segment HJ, then I'm just talking about this little bitty portion here, right? I'm talking about only a part of it. So the only way to describe it, to give it another name, would be to say HG. Just switching the letters. It's the same exact segment, just giving it a different name. In B, it says name all the rays at the end point of J. Okay, so the end point of J is like the starting point, right? It's where that we want that ray to start. So if we look at J, and so we're just going to start off. So we know it's going to be J something, right? And it's going to start at J, so that's going to be where the line starts, and then it's going to go through another point. So if we look at J, well, we can go this direction and go through F. So it would be JF. Again, we could do another one, J going through H. J going through E. Okay, notice again, I have my starting point. J doesn't continue. J is our starting point, so there's no arrow above it. And then we have J going through G. Notice if I were to flip these around, if I said FJ, I can still talk about the same ray, but I need to make sure my arrow is pointing through F, okay? Because it still starts at J, continues through F. So this will just be another name for that ray. And so then we start to look at sketching geometry. Like I said, it's a lot of visual. So if we think about the intersection of things, so think about intersection is where two things go across each other, right? So if we have the intersection of two lines, two different lines, they're going to intersect at one exact point, right? So that's what this first one's showing. It intersects at one exact point of A. If we have two planes intersecting, they're going to intersect at all the points that they go across. If I put two pieces of paper, if I were able to put one through the other one, basically, as you can see in this picture, we have this line here that's created, and so the intersection of two planes is a line. And so kind of using those, I want you to look at this on your own. If you're unable to do it, be sure you ask questions. It's also in the book. But looking at that one, you should be able to kind of start looking at this example on your own. Just for time's sake, because we have a lot to cover in this first section. And then the same thing with example 4, it says sketch two planes that intersect in a line. We just saw that in that example, so if you go back to this definition, it's basically going to look just like this, right? So again, we're going to skip that for now. You can look at your book if you need further assistance with it, or ask me, and I don't mind helping you with being able to draw those and imagine them and know what they look like. You do need to complete them, though. Just because I skipped them in this video doesn't mean you get to skip them. I'm telling you right now, I want them done. You can do it. Just if you need help, look at the book, ask a classmate, ask me, get them finished. So the last one we're going to look at is a real life problem. And so it's a diagram showing a molecule of a sulfur hexafluoride, the most potent greenhouse gas in the world. And it wants us to name two different planes that contain line R. Okay, so first we got to find line R, right? So where's line R in this picture? Well, we look for it. Line R is right here. And so a plane that would be going through that line R, we have to think about a plane that would be extending from this line. We could go this way with it and cut it across that direction, and have that line there. And so that one plane there, if you start to think about this in 3D, okay, you have to think about it in 3D. It's kind of hard to start visualizing. But that plane, we could look at F as one of the points, obviously. Okay, then we could look at B, another point that's on that line, and then any other third point is going to make a plane that goes through that line, right? So, I could rotate all the way around this line. I could rotate all the way around, and I have a million bajillion planes going all the way around that ray. I could keep putting a plane through it. Okay, and if you don't understand that concept, it's hard for me to show without showing you my hands. So be sure you ask me. So basically, like I said, I need 2 points that are on that line, and then I can name any third point, and that's going to be a plane. Any 3 points that are not on the same line, that are not all three on the same line, make a plane. So if I want to name two different planes, I could do F. I could say plane F, B, E. Could be one. I could do plane F. I could go all the way across and go to D on that line and say G. I could go the other way. Instead of going across like this horizontal direction, I could go vertical. I could say F, B, and A. I could say F, D, and A. These would all be acceptable answers. There are many answers to this. Okay, that would be going through that line of R. So that's all that we have for today. As you are taking your notes, just make sure that you have done all the examples. Like I said, even though two that I skipped, I want you to look through the book or get help on them, finish them. They are monitoring progress throughout your notes. You need to be looking at those. They are not required for you to take your mastery quiz, but I highly suggest that you do them as you go along to check your own answers. You have the answers to them in the packet itself, and then you have the extra practice at the end that must be completed before I will let you take your quiz. Even the practice, though, you do have the answers to it, but know that if you do not pass your quiz, you are going to get another homework assignment. Okay, so it is very crucial that you focus on getting your notes done, understanding this concept, asking questions, whether it's from your classmates, whether it's from me, whether it's from whoever, and whether it's looking up other YouTube videos that explain these same concepts. There's tons and tons and tons of stuff that explains points, lines, and planes. Okay, and I can give you some resources of good videos for those. So make sure you're understanding the concept. So when you come to me and you're saying, I'm ready, then I'm going to ask you, I'm going to be sure, hey, are you sure? You don't have any questions? You feel very confident? Remember, you have to get 4 out of 5 right to pass. You can only miss one problem, and they are not multiple choice. They are a short answer. Okay, so just be sure you're confident, be sure you're doing your notes, and you will be fine.